What's up, everybody? Jimmy Smith at a different house now, at an Airbnb in LA. When I finished my Fighter of the Year clip, I had forgotten. I wanted to talk about Israel Adesanya in the beginning, and I somehow spaced, and it just got away from me. I forgot. So I do read the comment section. Thanks for reminding me. I wanted to talk about Israel Adesanya in my breakdown of Fighter of the Year because I think he definitely deserves a top 3 mention for this year. And the reason I didn't choose him is he entered the UFC with a pretty good amount of hype, considering hadn't fought for a major promotion. But when I called his debut in Perth, both in the UFC and in the general community of fans in MMA, there was some excitement about Israel Adesanya coming to the UFC. So his trajectory, I think, starting off was pretty high. Now, if you saw my previous video about Jorge Masvidal, when I decide on Fighter of the Year, one of the things I think about, a major thing I think about probably, is where that person was at the beginning of the year and where they were at the end. And that trajectory, that means a lot to me. Israel Adesanya, almost from the beginning in the UFC, had a really high trajectory. There was a lot of attention on him. I think there was a sense, even in the beginning, that he would be a contender very, very soon. So if you told me in the beginning of 2019 that by the end of the year, Israel Adesanya would be champ at 185 pounds, I'd believe you. That wouldn't seem particularly, unbelievable to me. What would have been unbelievable is if you had said Israel Adesanya is going to be a champ at 185 pounds, but he's not going to fight Chris Weidman, Jacare, Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, or Luke Rockhold. That would have surprised me. And that's essentially what happened. When he got his interim title shot, it was after beating Anderson Silva, who was 1-4-1 in his previous 6 fights. And he gets an interim title shot. Of course, has a great fight against Kelvin Gastelum, a masterpiece against Robert Whittaker. But his right up to the interim title shot, I thought was almost gifted to him. It's one of the strangest title eliminators I can remember was him and Anderson Silva. That the winner gets a title shot. Dana White said that, at least at the interim title. And I thought, Anderson Silva would get a title shot after beating Israel Adesanya with the having not had a significant win since 2012. That's insane. But that's what happened. Israel Adesanya got the opportunity, and he made the most of it. But every now and then in the UFC, someone gets a title shot for being in the right place at the right time. They just happen to be on a streak. There's not a contender right now. It happens in boxing all the time. And Israel Adesanya, to me, could be one of those guys, although extremely talented. But there were veteran guys in the way. There were still veteran guys in the division. He was just in a position where he got a title shot without having to face any of those guys. So, do I think he deserves to be champion? Definitely, for sure. Did he have a great year? I thought he had a fantastic year. If one of those names that I mentioned had been on his list in 2019, I would be much more likely to think of him as Fighter of the Year. Also, once again, this was a guy who almost from the beginning, because of his style and his personality and his ability, I think was considered a contender very, very early. So the fact that he became an actual contender and ended up winning a title wasn't out of the realm of possibility, I think, at the beginning of 2019. I think Jorge Masvidal, and if you watch the previous video, what was so extraordinary about his run in 2019 was that I don't think anyone would have expected it. Israel Adesanya, to me, had that feeling of an anointed fighter from the beginning, of someone that everybody had their eye on, and it wouldn't take many wins to make him a contender, and that's what he did. So that's why he is certainly in my top 3 for 2019, but that's why he's not number 1 to me. Is the year he had was excellent. It was exceptional. He ends up a champion. But in many ways, it was a fulfillment of a destiny that we saw very early on in his UFC career. And Jorge Masvidal this year kind of came out of the woods. And so that's why I think that, along with Henry Cejudo, I think he's 2nd or 3rd this year behind Masvidal. But think what you like. I'm sorry I didn't go over him earlier. I just kind of spaced on it. Holiday brain. Anyway, appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you soon.